Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Strength Coach Experience, episode 25. Today, I want to welcome David Coggin, former player with the Philadelphia Phillies, the inventor of the Pocket Path, and also owner of the PFA Sports Performance Facility out there in Montclair, California. Dave, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and excited to get the conversation going.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Of course. We just talked about the weather, right? It's 75 there and 11 here, so a little difference.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Exactly. Yeah, I wish I was over there. One of these days, I'm going to go over there. My friend keeps trying to get me to go over there. So soon enough, I'll be over in California.
Yeah. Absolutely. But make sure you visit here.
Exactly. So just, get started off. Why don't we go over your background, growing up and kind of how you got into baseball, and then we'll kind of take things from there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, baseball, obviously big part of my life now. And, but before it wasn't, the 100% part of the pie, but growing up in California, played much more soccer than I did any other sport growing up. Never played any travel baseball, never played any Pop Warner or anything like that. And it was all soccer, travel soccer, things like that. When I got towards high school, that's when I started to kind of think that football might be my number one sport, because I played it all the time in the streets with kids, every weekend, every time out of school, we'd go either play wiffle ball or we'd go play football, tackle football at the park, or two-hand touch in the street. Soccer would be kind of more of my weekends. And then as I started to get to high school, we had an option to play more sports. I got on campus as a freshman in the summer before getting onto the campus when school started, and started playing football and doing all the summer workouts, which I thought was fantastic and such a different mindset. And it introduced weightlifting and introduced different style of coaching, different athletes for sure, way better athletes than I'd been around at that point. And did that in the fall. Then of course, soccer was still a big part of my life. So I played soccer in the interim middle part, and then baseball kind of was the vacation of all those two sports. It was sort of the easy sport. As I started to play football more, started to get a coach in there to coach me up and be a quarterback. They knew I could throw the ball really well. It wasn't a big thing throwing that back then, but they knew they had something different, and they kind of changed the offense towards that. So by the time my sophomore year hit, I was on varsity as a football player, as quarterback. Now as a freshman, I was third string, fourth string, so I never even started because we ran the ball and did some other things. So by the time sophomore hit, I really blossomed as a football player and shot up the ranks around the country as one of the top quarterbacks, and had to take soccer, put a back seat on soccer at the moment because I was just getting kind of beat up and going right into baseball. And I made varsity as a sophomore because of the strength that I gained in football. So my background was really multi-sports. I could have played 3 sports in college, picked football, and ended up getting a scholarship offer and signed to play at Clemson, and to be a quarterback, also be their punter, and then also play baseball, possibly third base, and then pitch. So at that time, that wasn't going on a lot because there wasn't such a aggressive push to just place one sport for so early on. So I was lucky to be able to kind of figure out which one was going to be my sport long enough, and then in that process, because I was able to do that, I think I got stronger in all the sports. So that's kind of my background into high school. Then I got drafted. So I was going to go to Clemson. So I got drafted in the first round by the Philadelphia Phillies. So I had a big decision to make. Do I go play football, risk injuries, that kind of stuff, or play baseball? And so I ended up going the baseball route and went to Philadelphia, played 10 years with them, 3 years in the big leagues. And here I am today. Started PFA years ago as sort of an idea called prevention fitness for athletes at the time, where I had a buddy of mine that had a physical therapy facility. So I asked him, hey, when you guys close at 7, can I come in and kind of bridge the gap for these athletes who maybe have been hurt, then they come out of injury and they don't want to just continue that cycle. So I was the first out here to bring in kind of a physical therapy before you hit prehab kind of mindset into a normal strength routine. You know, at the time, everybody just kind of did football workout, and that was about what they did to get stronger. And then I brought this kind of other way of doing it, and part of that was just from my injuries and going through rehab for my shoulder surgeries. Another part of it, a big part of it, was being down at USC after I retired with Tom House and helping him train, and when he was just getting started with his RDRBI program, which was fun because we got to work with Tom Brady. I got to work with Carson Palmer, Alex Smith, all these quarterbacks down there because of my background. That gave me a whole different kind of window of perspective of what I wanted to do after my career. And then working with the two Indian players down there, I was their coach. The $1 Million Arm Disney movie that they made, I was part of that as well. So I had a lot of fun time in a small window there, where I started traveling across the country and just kind of meeting guys and picking the brains of Eric Cressy and Todd Durkin, and just having these guys as really great mentors. Tom House, it's a pretty cool journey that I've been on, and to be able to do the same thing for other trainers and other coaches has been kind of fun as well at the moment now. So it's kind of neat. That's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, I mean, what a journey, like I said, and it's almost, I think it's, across the board a little bit, mine, the same thing. Once you kind of start down the journey, when you get into the rabbit hole of trying to understand strength and conditioning, understand mechanics of baseball or whatever sport you're on, right, it kind of takes off. And then in a very short time, it seems like you meet a lot of people that really help with intuition and a lot of, different knowledge base. I just want to rewind a little bit. When you were coming up in high school, college, you said you played all three sports. Were you a weight room person, or were you intrigued about movement back then, or was it just kind of you were just getting ready for sports season to season, or was that something that came later?
Yeah, I would say that in football you had kind of your, hey, you got to lift, you go lift, you do your lift. So I wasn't at all, and it wasn't like this back then anyway. So it wasn't like I'm like now today, where you can go search 7 or 8 different strength facilities that do a great job in a small area. And be able to kind of pick the one that fits your kind of mindset or your whatever your sport you're doing. Back then, it really wasn't like that. There was 24-hour fitness, and there was like valleys and things like that. But it was more of just the high school weight room. So when soccer came around, wasn't any weightlifting. There wasn't any preparation of that. It was more just you're going to run a lot during this practice, and that's how you're going to get your legs stronger. And you work skill. So it was a ton of skill. Then baseball was nearly zero lifting. Not even shoulder care, really. It was very, very minor stuff. Maybe J-bands were coming onto the scene, but I don't think even they were here yet. So it wasn't a lot of lifting going on at all back in those days. There was more of, I think I had, my advantage was just being able to play all these different sports, which gave me a different kind of skill set for strength and for skill. So yeah, it wasn't like it is today. They're pretty spoiled today.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And for everybody listening, just Keenan, what he just said, he believes that playing multiple sports and different movement patterns is really what helped him grow in those younger years. I've talked about it before. I think one of the issues nowadays is that instead of going out and playing multiple sports with their friends, kids are just going to performance places, and they're kind of counting on a lot of coaches to make up for those, days in the dirt with football, playing wiffle ball, and that kind of changing movement pattern circle we kind of had growing up. And I think that's something that hopefully changes a little bit more because like I said, I don't think there's any better developer of movement patterns than just letting you move, letting you play different sports and things like that. I'm sure you've gotten the question too, every parent that always asks me, what do I do? How do I know? I said, let them play everything that you can physically get them in until they're about 16 years old. And eventually I think the movement or the sport will find you, right? It will eventually, you'll say, hey, I'm not too great at this one. This one I'm a little better at. This one here I enjoy and I kind of naturally can get. So I think that's a big point you bring up there where, being able to play sports and playing as many as possible seems to still be, the biggest driver of athletic movement and development there.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part about being a parent is that you will see, significant gains when you specialize in a sport in the short term. Mm-hmm. You might pass a kid who wasn't doing that. Maybe he went to go play basketball for a season, and you stayed and did baseball, and you played 50 more games. Okay, so now you come back and you see the kid again, and your son's way ahead of the other kid. The problem is that ceiling gets hit pretty quick though, and burnout happens and injuries happen. And This kid doesn't have that yet, and he's going to catch up slowly, and then he's going to pass. So, and then you might, oh, we need to change the way we do our work. Maybe it's a different facility, maybe it's a different coach. Okay, then maybe it is, and that gives you a little extra stimuli, and then you catch back up. But this kid, he kind of goes back to another sport. Then he comes out. Now that gap got even bigger. That he was just a little bit behind. He was a lot behind you, and then he caught up, and he went a little bit ahead of you. Then you went ahead of him, and then he went way ahead of you the next time when the sport kind of switched. So by the end of the day, when you both are probably juniors, seniors, maybe sophomores, you're way behind, or worse off, you're burnt out or just over the actual sport, or injuries happen as well. So it's a challenge. I get it. I mean, it's hard not to look at the kid next to you and judge your kid and realize, wow, they were just the same in Little League, and now look how much better he is. What's he doing? Well, it could be genetics, most likely. It could be just he wants it more. He's just got a different little DNA. There's so many factors that can factor in that. The best thing a parent can do is support and give them the opportunity to flourish by listening to experts that are telling you keep playing that other sport as long as you can. Now, I usually by freshman year, I tell people, hey, going into your freshman year, my advice is sign up for football. They're, oh, whoa, what? Are you kidding me? Are you for the summer? And get in there and see if it is a sport that he likes, and get him away from playing baseball for a little bit, or whatever sport he might be kind of going into, and see if he gravitates to that, right? And then by the time your freshman year is over, you're going to realize probably what sport really is the sport. It may not be football, but at least you gave it a chance to kind of get you involved in something a little different. And I know injuries in football is like the big number one thing of kind of the scare, and for good reasons. But at a freshman level, they're not banging around like they are in NFL and college and varsity football. So it's not as bad as what I think it portrays you to be. So I feel like there's a benefit, especially in the summer. You're just lifting, you're doing 7-on-7, you're doing a lot of other stuff. By the time season comes around, if it's not your thing, at least you gave yourself a few months of that just to try it. And yeah, if by sophomore year you just realize I hate it, or I'm really good at baseball and I need to start focusing in on it, all right, at least you gave it a shot, at least for a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's the constant comparison, and I think now it's the constant access to videos and to get a kind of an inside look of what other kids are doing. It's no longer, even if you don't train with them, even if you don't see them a lot, you still have that access to say, oh, look, now he's throwing 94, or now he's doing this stuff. And I think you're right. It makes a lot of things hard, because it's very hard to tell a kid who's 14 years old to trust the process, right? It's very, because they're seeing this constant gain, and it's, well, this is what they're doing, so this must be it, or this is probably the direct result of why they're this good, or why they've come so far in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, all these sports are now going more year round, and I get it. Like you want to go play another sport, but then your coach for that sport's like, whoa, you can't just leave us. We got a big tournament coming up, and blah blah blah, whatever it is, and now your gap to kind of get your arm in shape for baseball is starting to shorten, and now you're going from one sport to another without even preparing for it. It's a tough gig right now, I think, for kids and parents. But at the youngest age, just try to, what I call, be a free agent, for sports. Don't sign any long-term contracts, and that allows you a little flexibility to be able to leave a program or a team or a sport, and try to kind of see if you can do it and enjoy and just rest your body from other pieces of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is not that whether or not you're going to find kind of a hidden gem, but that relaxation, right? That brain break, right? Okay. Let's give this skill a break. Let's go develop other ones that will in turn help. But that mental break, I think, is huge. And I don't think that's a big enough, that's not the main reason that's brought up. And I think things would be a lot better if that was, because instead of saying, just go try this to see if you're good at this, it's more of, go do this so you can get your head out of baseball for a month or two, or go do something, like you said, go try for football. Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, but you're not going to be thinking about your pitching mechanics or your velo while you're on the football field, right? It's just a way to kind of take a break and then come back to it, and then, maybe find another angle, another way.
Yeah, correct.
So I want to go into, as after you got drafted and stuff, what are some of the things you went through kind of that maybe made you get into more the performance thing in the pitching stuff throughout your career in the minor leagues and in the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, during that process, I wasn't, and it wasn't available, but I wasn't looking for any, mechanical gurus or guys who maybe in one part of the country are doing a really great job, because it just wasn't easy to try to find those things. And so it's just sort of, you just kind of, found a throwing partner, or you found an area and you just threw, and that's all you did. You didn't really go over too much. And once I got to spring training, then yeah, of course, now you're around other guys, other players, so you can kind of pick the brains or watch the habits. And to me, I was more of a watch the habits. I wasn't a really kind of in your face, ask you questions or anything kind of guy. I was more just kind of observing and just kind of picking up things like that. Good coaches. There's always going to be really bad coaches, even in professional organizations. There's going to be really great coaches. There's going to be great mentors. And I think just the things that I look back and what I use now that I learned back then are from all of them. So things from the bad coaches, what not to do. Things from the more mentor guys for the brain and ideas and mentality of throwing. And then physical, watching the players next to me. Kurt Schilling, how does he go about his approach for bullpens? How does he, conserve his energy to be able to throw 9 innings? And how does a pitcher like Randy Wolf give up a couple runs in the first, but still is in the game in the 7th? How does he do that? How is he so tough-minded to realize that he isn't throwing 100 miles an hour, but he looks like he thinks he is. There's so many little pieces that you learn along the way that I find tapping back into to share with players, and that's kind of one of the beauties of playing for a long time. But one of the really beauties is just being open-minded and humble and not having an ego that your way is the right way, and if it didn't work out, it was someone else's fault, not your fault. So that to me is a big problem. That's what I think I just described Twitter. Yes, I'm talking
you describe every social media platform from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram.
So, yeah, I know. So that's kind of like where I things that and then things I learned after. I really kind of I think my knowledge just went off the charts when I started to see what Tom House was doing with biomechanics, not his theories necessarily or his philosophies, but just being able to go, man, he really looks at things so much more biomechanically and more physical than mental, and then bring mental in. It was like an all encompassing kind of thinking. And I was like, okay, I could see my kind of life kind of heading towards more that physical side in the weight room, in the gym, because I felt like I wanted to work with athletes from all sports, just because I was one of those athletes. So I didn't want to go pitching coach. I didn't want to go be with, keep trying out with independent league teams. I wanted to kind of get on and get moving. And I think the big thing that Tom taught me was that, one, take care of the physical side of things and teach these guys how to take care of their bodies. Second thing was how to move and what to look for, and using some slow motion analysis to understand where pieces are. I got to sit into, I think countless amounts of seminars with Greg Rose from TPI and all these experts. And then I went across country then, because I was excited about that. And I went and signed up for about every Perform Better seminar that they were running, whether it was a 1-day or 3-day. I did Eric Cressy. I went up there and shadowed him for a week. I mean, I went all over the place. Todd Durkin down in San Diego, great mentor as well, and just tried to, just feel like you could get every piece of it, not just the mindset of the technical stuff, but more the how do you handle making a room, energized and all these different things. So I was really kind of like everything all in one, and then trying to bring that to PFA, which is what we did.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome tip to bring up, the experience, right? I think open-mindedness and experience go hand in hand, right? And everybody, they try to get as much experience as you can. I think it's important what you said, to go in there with an open mind, because there is no bad coach, right? There's bad ways of doing things, and you can say, okay, I'm not going to personally use that because I know it doesn't work, but I'm going to use this other thing that they did, right? There's always, not every, but you can always kind of pick a positive. And I think that's very important. Not only are you going to go around to get the knowledge, you also want to be open to, either reject or add to your toolbox the different things that you learned, so you're not limiting yourself. And we talk about Twitter and Instagram, I think, and I've talked about on other podcasts, this whole secrecy thing, right? Or my stuff is the greatest, and I don't care what, anybody else is doing, or you ask them a simple question, they get aggravated. And I think that hinders the field, because we should all just be able to pass around, ideologies. I can tell you what I do. You could tell you what, tell me what you do. I can't take your program because, bringing it full circle, it's that energy that you talked about, and I wrote a blog about that. I've talked about before, the energy you bring into your program and the confidence that you put behind your program and how you present it to your players, to your athletes, is what separates you, right? We all use the same methods to a point, right? We're all kind of using the same thing. We don't recreate the wheel altogether, but it's the energy, it's the way in which you present them, it's the timing, and it's just how you explain them to the athletes. Because like you said, you're not only teaching them how to throw better, but you're teaching them how to take care of themselves, right? You don't want somebody you're going to have to hold hands with for 8 years. You want to be around somebody who understands what you're doing, goes to you for advice, but eventually, when you let them out and they go to the minors, go to college, they know how to take care of themselves, and they can say, okay, my shoulder hurt. Well, what did I do with Dave last summer? Oh, we did some of these exercises, and then continue to incorporate that stuff that you've talked about.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
So exactly. So I just want to go into, so after all that stuff, how did you get involved, like starting PFA? Let's go through that, and then we'll get into the pocket path, which I'm really excited about.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like I said, I was at USC, and then I was thinking, what do I want to do? They wanted me to be a pitching coach with them. But because of my major league experience in the NCAA, having a lot of different rules of how many guys you could have on a staff like that, it was going to take some, kind of things to happen that probably would take years to actually accomplish. So it got me thinking about, all right, what else do I like? So the fitness side, I went through a lot of injuries. I came back from these injuries throwing harder, better shape. And so I thought, well, there's not much out there that's like that. There's only kind of the same old circle. So I wanted to close the gap and bring more of that physical therapy approach into the workout. So kind of more of a balanced approach with that. So we did that, and we were really successful with that. We had tons of players that had never done that before, and we're in Southern California, so there's really good talent. So in our particular area, the Inland Empire, it's not the hotbed of talent that you would expect all these big leaguers coming from, but they were coming from here because of this workout style that we brought. And so we were bringing this real raw talent, a little more refined by how to move better, how to do it in the weight room, but also how to move better on the mound and how to throw the ball better, be a better approach to catch play, just having a better understanding rather than just kind of go to this place for that, you go to this place for that, and they don't communicate very well. So that was the way we started it. We outgrew the first facility, which was called Team Physical Therapy in Rancho Cucamonga, moved to an Upland facility, and now we're in a really nice place here in Montclair behind me. And we have I don't know how many players we've worked with. Maybe there's about 400 or 500 players in the last 10 years that have gone on to play Division I or college baseball or pro ball. We've had, I want to say 12 day one picks in the draft. We have multiple big leaguers in there right now. So it's been kind of fun to be able to be on this side of things and be able to share my experiences, not just as a player, but also the experiences of being around the country, learning from some of the top trainers in the game. And I think it's been a good recipe for everybody.
Yeah, bringing all that stuff together, I think is important. And I think it's something that has to continue to go around in the private sector, because like you said, the communication is always hard if you have 4 different places, but if you can kind of get a lot of that stuff done in-house, I think it makes a better product, and you're helping out the kids, plus you get to be a part of the full thing, because a lot of times, if you're just in one part of those things, if you're just the strength coach, they go to another PT or they go here, I think you kind of miss some of the stuff, or you're not able to do as much as you could if you understood the full kind of picture.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah.
So I want to get into the pocket path. Now, how did you come about the pocket path? How did that kind of become a thing?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So this goes back 10 years ago when I was just starting kind of doing CFA, but also needing to do some lessons to kind of support the one. So I started to kind of work with guys, and again, going back to seeing the biomechanics of things, it had me looking at pitching much differently than what I was taught, which was a little more just kind of antidotes and things like that. And I started to see how the body moved. I started to pay attention to certain things guys were doing commonly. And I was like, man, I'm seeing a lot of the same problems. How can I create a foundation point? Because the catch play for me was never going to be really good, and then the bullpen was going to be really bad, or vice versa. They were going to be bad at catch play and then really good in the bullpen. It's very rare that I would see that, especially at the younger ages. And I always stress that about this process is that the younger ages, they're not strong enough or athletic enough yet to do it wrong. So the windows are shrunk, where a older guy who's a freak of an athlete can do things completely wrong and still get away with it and go from A to B pretty well and get drafted and might even be in the big league. But I always looked at those guys as those guys weren't sticking around the big league very long. So those guys were getting injured, or they were really the flavor of the month, and they're just gone. So that's how I kind of started to look at things like, okay, how do I get some common denominators? So I said, well, let's look at big leaguers. Let's go ahead and look at the best of the game, and let's see how we can kind of see some windows that they look really, really dissimilar at. And man, I got more confused. I was like, crap, there's a lot of different ways these guys are doing it. So then I thought, well, how do I narrow that down to make it more clear? And I said, well, let's get rid of relievers. And the reason I said get rid of relievers, which is one of the most important kind of decisions I've ever made in my journey here as a coach, is because relievers become relievers for negative reasons at some point in their career. I mean, at some point in their career, a coach said, you're not getting lefties out, but you get righties out, or you get righties out, not lefties, or you get injured whenever you get into the second half of the season, or your velocity dips late in the game. You do a great job getting the first hitters out. So all these things are reasons why every pitcher at some point in their life, because they probably all were the stud in Little League, they probably were the stud in high school, and then they started to get exposed because of those things when the competition got better, the seasons got longer, the intensity increased. So they become relievers. Okay, well, then the guys that don't are the starters. So how does a starter, all right, let's look at them, because they're the guys that do all those things, supposedly, right? Well, then I thought, well, the 3, 4, 5 starters, no one really knows those guys' names very often unless it's your favorite team. And the reason I said is because those guys are kind of on the bubble. They could be the next guy, but they could also fall to the bullpen, go back down to the minor league, bounce back and forth, up and down, get injured. I was that guy, so I know that feeling. Now, we know almost every 1 and 2 starter in the whole entire major league. And the reason why you know those guys is because they start the All-Star game every year. They have the biggest contracts. And the reason they got those things is because they stay healthy and they continue to play their career at that high level for 5+ years. So I'm always like, let's look at the second-year contract guys and let's look at the starters. So when I found that window niche, it was like, whoa, okay, now I see things that are very similar. They all moved very, very, very similar. There was a tempo about them. There was a sequence about them. There was a arm path about them that was really similar, because that was the second part of it, is that these guys didn't start out the way they looked later in their career, but their stuff was still the same. And what happened was their arm paths were getting shorter. And I was like, okay, let me look into that. And what I noticed in those guys is that a lot of them, if they didn't make any changes and their arm path was good already, they were all shortstops in high school. They were quarterbacks in high school. There were these athletes that require no mechanics. They just literally don't think about their mechanics. They are only thinking about their bat. They're thinking about how they take ground balls. They're thinking about their footwork. They're talking about where to anticipate. They're everything but a group of shortstops down the line doing a bunch of crazy drills that you see down there. It was no, they're just out there catching and throwing. And I went, you know what? Let me do some experiments here at the facility. And I had some infielders that were pitchers too. I had some outfielders that were pitchers, and I had some kind of POs, pitchers only, that would be sort of awkward and threw hard, but they're kind of just uncoordinated. And the infielder, he could always throw the ball really easily, stick his landing, hold his landings, and do these things that I was seeing was common among high-level pitchers when they threw. They always had a good plant foot, and they always stayed well-balanced after they threw. So when I asked the shortstop to do that, they could do it no problem. When I asked the outfielder, who was more of a momentum-based, long arm, he couldn't stop his momentum very well. He would collapse, and he was just a mess. Then the other guy that was this kind of tall, goofy pitcher only, he was a train wreck, because he was stabbing and wrapping, and he was doing all kinds of different stuff because he was always trying to get to positions too early. So anyway, I took those two guys, those last two, and I just started kind of make them do infield drills. And what happened was, without me coaching them yet, just having them do infield yet, and a lot of coaches have done this, but they've never created a program or anything to support it. It's just that they started throwing the ball well. They started experiencing less arm pain. They started to be more accurate. They were feeling really good. And then now the job was to create a plan and a program throughout the whole week that reinforce that rather than just let them go rest of the week and play catch like they always do, and then try to tell them, all right, now you got to get shorter on the mound, or you got to get on time like you did over at shortstop when I was hitting you ground balls. And that's what I found. I found that coaches were trying to do it, but they weren't going all in to really give that kid enough time to actually make that change, whether it was a minor leaguer or a little leaguer. And once we did that, it was like it blew me away, and it blew our coaches away to see how incredibly different the type of athlete you were getting and how much better they were getting, where kids were making varsity that would have been on JV. Guys that were on varsity were getting scholarships and B1s and things that they would have never gotten before. Guys getting drafted, guys going to the big leagues. It was just like unbelievable when that approach started to happen. And so I had a parent come to me, and this is kind of a fun story. That he saw me give his kid a lesson. He listened to my methodology. It was opposite of what he ever heard. This guy played Japan as a college baseball player, so he knew baseball and he knew how to coach lots of little league. He was a guy who did a lot of coaching. And when he heard me talk about going to the arm path first, then go to the lower half and all those other things in the sequence that I do it in, it made so much sense to him. It was like, wow. And he saw his kid instantly change night and day. And then kid kept getting better and better. And then he would go to the little league and start to look and pay attention to see all these terrible ways kids were throwing. And if there's one thing about throwing, to me, is it's there's nothing more important than it in baseball. And if you think about it in this way, like hitting, we strike out and we miss balls, but you're going to get another bat, and everybody does that. So that's not a big deal. You see it on TV. You know, guys will make errors. Everybody makes errors, and that just happens. But nothing's more embarrassing at whatever age it is to not be able to throw properly, where it costs you the strength, the accuracy. So that happens every time you throw. So to me, it's like a purpose of, like, sounds weird, but saving baseball in a way, or eliminating the DH, as I joke about sometimes, and teaching guys to throw right versus just kind of, baseball's not your thing. Maybe just hit instead of throw. The enjoyment of the baseball goes away. The embarrassment goes away. So I feel like that was a major thing in the part of our purpose here. So he calls me one day and he says, hey, have you ever thought about making something that could support your methodology? And I'm like, I've had some thoughts, but I've never really given it time. He said, well, I sketched something out. So he sketched it out, and it was a shirt with a pocket sewn in into the shirt. And I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, I think actually that would work. And so I was interested about it. We started kind of collaborating, and we developed it further, and we developed it into what it is today, which is the detachable sleeve and the belt. And it's just the feedback and the way people have taken to it has been incredible. Because that's one thing when you send something out to somebody who you're not next to them and they're just trying it for the first time, whether it's a big leaguer or a little parent, you're kind of nervous because are they going to mess it all completely up and not really get it? It was the opposite. I mean, they just instantly got it, and then major league teams started buying it. And what I've always felt, which is my passion with this, is the physical therapy facilities across the country that are dealing with little league elbows and Tommy Johns and shoulder problems with these young kids. It may not be a strength problem. It may not be an overuse problem. It might be a mechanical problem, because a lot of parents, will tell you, I did everything right. I rested him. We do our exercises, and he still got hurt. Well, maybe it's not those problems. And then Padres and a couple other teams will have been using it for their TJ rehab protocols. So before they get the guys throwing, they'll spend 2 or 3 weeks using the belt with no ball, and then they'll bring the plyo ball in, then they'll bring the baseball in. And they said the results have been unreal and night and day. So to me, that's my excitement about it, is getting that in the hands of physical therapists on every team, but not just every team, but all across the world. And that's the pocket. That's how it kind of came about, and that's where we are today. And now we got softball launching soon, and youth one, T-ball one, which is really cool. It's a shirt that actually has fabric that Velcro all over the front, anywhere. Comes with a little foam ball, and then it can stick anywhere on the shirt, which is neat for the little kids to practice at home and throw against the wall and not break anything.
That's an awesome story. Like I said, I always love it, when I saw it, because it's addressing the mechanics directly. You're not trying to put a Band-Aid, you're not changing things, or you're not taking something that was already used and then trying to mold it in. Like I love the weighted ball stuff, but a lot of it is if you don't have good mechanics, right, or you don't understand your mechanics, the weighted balls are detrimental, right? I feel like a lot of the things that have been created are, if you don't have a good base,
Yeah.
if you start to use it too soon, you can hurt yourself, right? The Jaeger bands are great for warming up in little muscles, but if you do them wrong, if you do too much, or you do it, after a big lift or at a wrong time, it could be detrimental, right? So the thing with the pocket path I've always liked is you're addressing the mechanics at the base level. So if you don't have good mechanics, we're fixing that. And if you have, more advanced mechanics, we're going to refine that and then maybe, or teach you something that you didn't have, or teach you how to use parts of your body that you didn't have to make you more efficient.
Yeah, correct. I always say this a lot, is like, and this is, I think, the advantage of me being a strength coach along with being a pitching coach, was I would never have someone who's going to squat or deadlift and just go, hey, we're going to start this program and just start, loading weight as I go for this 6-week program. I would fix the movement first to make sure they can squat properly and get that foundation set, then start to add that weight into it. And you'll get less injuries, you'll get better progress. And I feel like it was the same thing in throwing and weighted balls, is that why would I just give this whole program, this whole high school, the same exact program, just to throw the crap out of the ball as hard as they can. And then, yeah, 2 guys do well with it and they show some gains, but then there's about 15 that don't really do a whole lot. And then there's about 7 or 8 that injure themselves. But this is social media. Who gets on social media? the 2. You don't hear about the 20 other guys that didn't really have success with it. And maybe, and well, my opinion was that they just weren't ready for it. They weren't moving right for it. It wasn't the weighted ball problem. It was their problem. It was them not being ready to do it. So this is hopefully addressing it. People ask me all the time, is like, is this a competitive thing to these different kind of programs? It's like, no, it's a complementary thing. It's something that will make their program actually even better if they adapt it and teach kids to move better, or at least understand what they're trying to do, and then get to it over time as they practice it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I talked about it with Rachel Balkovic on my last podcast about how the future of strength conditioning should move towards all the skills coaches having that background in strength conditioning, right? And we talked about having base knowledge, having the anatomy background, but more importantly, I think you hit it right on the head. It's because we see things differently, right? If you're, even with me, right? I do with baseball players, little kids, professional, but I don't have that, when I first started, that overwhelming understanding of the pitching mechanics, because I didn't play baseball, I played a different sport. But going through mechanics, watching videos and things, I got the gist of what I wanted to get. So now when a kid throws, I'm still able to identify what the problem is. Then you go talk to the pitching coach, and now we can come up with, patterns and different things that we can fix. So I think it's not only, we don't want everybody doesn't have to go take anatomy and get a master's in strength and conditioning, but it's that thought process. I'm not going to have a kid throw weighted balls who doesn't have sufficient sufficient patterning, because it's the same thing in the weight room. I would never make a kid squat 225 who can't control his body with body weight. So I think it's more that thinking is what's going to change. And I think you bring it up.
No, I agree. Yeah, totally agree with that. I think the physical therapy world and strength world now is communicating really well now. That wasn't in the past. They're doing a better job of that. The outlier, though, is the pitching coaches. They're not communicating with those 2 groups. Pitching coach is trying to communicate with the data analysis people. So you got these groups, but there's this big gap right there that everybody needs to be communicating as a whole, and especially in that strength conditioning and PT world, because there's so many things that I'm teaching through the pocket path that is only thinking of, wow, this is how the anatomy. When I show the pocket path to a strength coach or to a PT, it's instant. Like, oh, makes complete sense, because they're thinking about it anatomy based. They're not thinking of it as, well, I coached a guy in 1992 that looked completely opposite, and he was successful, and he was one of my best pitchers. Like, that's what a pitching coach looks at it as. They don't look at it as the foundational movement thing that is going to just place a good foundation there. So when they add stride and they add these other adrenaline pieces, that it's just a window of timing. So the arm starts to open up, but it doesn't open up in wrong ways. It stays into a nice position. So I think that's happening. People are communicating much better, but it is challenging.
Yeah, of course. But like I said, I mean, I think it's one of the few pieces of equipment I've read about and seen where it is useful in a large group of those different facets, if you will, right? Because usually you have a weighted ball, right? You don't really you're not going to bring in weighted ball throwing programs to PTs, right? Some of them will go with it, but for the most part, the majority is going to say, we're not doing that. That's crazy, or certain other things, but it's very good to see that you've kind of created something that is acceptable, throughout most of our kind of little categories in which an athlete has to go through and see.
Yeah, true.
I just want to go through for everybody listening. Can you just go through it just real briefly, what the pocket path kind of forces you to do and why it's a little bit different than everything else, or why it's different than other throwing programs?
Yeah, I'm going to jump out of the screen real quick. I'm going to grab one right here in front of me. So I'll kind of demo it.
Perfect. Yeah, we can get that with the video, and then anybody listening will just, they can listen and get a good understanding.
And I'm going to, by the way, on February 21st, I believe, if you follow me on Instagram, we'll promote it here soon. But I'm going to do a free kind of webinar demo and just kind of sign up and just show what this does. So what I did is I put this belt on. Let me try to tilt this a little bit. All right, so the belt on here is going to attach with this Velcro sleeve. Now, the idea is that it's going to stick on here, and then it's guiding me into that kind of infielder. So you think of an infielder, he brings the ball in and he just throws the ball. That's what an infielder does. He just brings it in. So naturally, without thinking, the body's flowing into positions that across the board they all do. So there's two positions we call low pocket or high pocket. High pocket would be coming from the chest up to there, and that would be more of a catch play mindset where they're going here. So what they end up doing is this is guiding us to is this getting from point A to B, with B saying the elbow is at armpit height. And now I'm going to train my hips to take the arm from there. So anytime we see guys who maybe wrap, their hips are opening up and then their arms kind of forcing out of there, that would be a problem, putting stress on areas. We see guys who will yank the elbow up because they're trying to scap load, and then they're trying to then rotate their hips, so their sequence is off. So what this is teaching really is just learning how to go from a sequence of 1, 2, 3 hips. And when I'm turning my hips there, you notice I'm relaxing my hand here. And I can feel my scap loading because of my hips. And then when I feel that feeling, my arm will just naturally shoot out like a slingshot. So the idea is just teaching, just like a hitter taking practice swings constantly in his room or against the net, is to create this feeling of letting the hips get the arm at that moment that it gets into that good, powerful position. And I like this position mostly because the body tells me I like it. It's let's go to the weight room kind of thing. If I'm going to have a kid, let's say he benches 225, it's his max, he's all excited, he grabs the bar. I don't even barely need to teach him anything. I said, he goes and he hits it, right? So, and then I tell him a week from now, hey, we're going to do 225 since you already hit it. And I said, but I want you to hold the bar like this. And I want you to try to lift it. No chance. So the hand position relative to where the elbow is, this is a very good supportive position to be able to absorb all that energy and then shoot it out, in my opinion. And if I ask him to bring his hands in too close, that 225 becomes impossible too. So the body likes to be in certain positions. So I try to pay attention to that. So going back to looking at the infielder throw without thinking or being taught, I like to pay attention to that. Watch a quarterback do the same thing. Go in the weight room, watch someone do stuff. Also, another thing that's subtle is tell someone to whip their arm around and wiggle it around, and they'll just kind of whip it like this. I pay attention to that because that's what everybody kind of does. They don't go out and around. They don't go like this. They don't drop their elbow. They kind of naturally just get their elbow up, and they just kind of relax and feel that flip. So that's the whip that we kind of communicate. So when I'm teaching them to get into that 2 position, it's more just a whip feeling. So their arm becomes that weightless feeling. So you ask them to, hey, just let your hand just become weightless, and they'll do this. You see tension, you'll see them tight like this, or lassoing, they'll lasso too early. And what ends up happening when you teach lassoing is that the athlete will always try to pull the ball into the ear, and then it comes too early, and then they'll cast out and they'll lose a lot of spin. So we started to see that the whip part of that was an important piece for guys to not overtrain the hand inside. So it'll get there, but it'll get there with a little less getting in too close or behind their head, these kind of things that we see. And then, of course, the finish of all that is the stick. So you got pocket, there's the arm pass, you got whip, there's the hip and shoulder separation, scap loading, short stretch cycle, all these things that are happening inside. And then, of course, the landing becomes the stick. And then we have a specific drills and teaches that will be all relative to the landing. Lots of windows there that can go wrong, because I always say this, is that the arm pass isn't the most important. but it's the most important to know where it needs to be, because if your landing is terrible, then that's going to mess you up, even if you're perfect here. So, I could take a perfect arm path on a big leaguer, put him on wheels under his foot, and then he slips every time he lands, then he's dead. He's not a good pitcher anymore. So it tells you how you have to have good everything. So the whole chain is linked up, but the way you teach it is the significant part. By teaching like an infielder, when he's his whole life just learning that good arm path because of natural reasons, throwing the bases, having his body in weird positions, but his arm does the same thing all the time. So he's established that, he's checked that off the list without even knowing it. So now we teach him lower half stuff. And that's why he becomes a pitcher so much easier and so much faster, where the other guy who has, wraps and points and head postures and all that stuff, you got a lot of stuff to work with them. And if you're not doing it in the right sequence, then it may be forever for you to fix them. So that's kind of thing. And we call it the flow, where you could see me taking this off and just kind of touching it and letting it kind of relax. Or I can just leave it there. I can move the belt up higher. And then that's where we kind of see a lot of our catchers and infielders liking to do this drill, or they're right here, just kind of working, getting the mind. Okay, that's what I need to do. Because if I did this wrong, let's say I went a little more ball dominant, it slides off. So that's the beauty of the Velcro, is that the idea is if I wrap my wrist like this and cup it, it pulls off as well. So the way you have to come out actually changes the diameter of the sleeve to make sure that the hand can slide out. So it's just a simple idea, but super useful, highly effective, and you can do it without a ball, which we prefer guys starting that way. Everybody gets excited when it comes to their house because they want to get the baseball out and start throwing on the mound. It's like there's steps in the program that you want to hit, and then when you get those easier, it'll make all the other stuff happen easier. And the other part I didn't show you is that now with it off, now it's very easy for the athlete to kind of imagine where that ball was sitting and just create the same feeling as they're throwing. So as I get into more of a stride, you see my body start to separate from my hand, but because I've taught myself to get here consistently, the body now starts to kind of stretch and become that catapult or that slingshot. And that's kind of in a nutshell what the pocket path is.
Yeah, no, I like how, you talked about, comfortability, where the body wants to go, or different patterns. So basically what you're doing is you're creating a new pattern, but in between comfortable ones. So we don't have to teach the kind of the whole thing, right? So by having it, on the stomach and coming up, yes, the body's not used to taking the hand from there, but when we get up to kind of shoulder level, that's a comfortable place, right? Or when we wrap around.
Yeah.
So, just being able, and then you have that, that reinforcement there. If it comes off the body, right, something's going on with the wrist, the path isn't exactly there. So like I said, I think it's extremely user-friendly, very simple. Just to go back now, we talked about the arm path. In your opinion, do you think that if you have, in terms of the breakdown of pitching, is the arm path the most important because it's the hardest one to fix? Like if you have a great arm path, right, you said it's easier to fix the lower body, but if I have great leg mechanics, right, would that make it harder if I have bad arm path or my arm path isn't there?
I think with the path that we have, the pocket path, it actually just creates such a faster way to learn that. It enhances it like so quickly. So and here's why I made it really, is because of that question. How do we fix it faster? Well, you work on it more often, right? But if you're a pitching coach like me, you've done this for years and you realize that you fix him on Monday and he's an incredibly different pitcher. He's throwing the ball better. And then by next Monday rolls around, you're like, did you even work on any of this? He's right back to where he was before, right? So to me, that was the whole genesis of why we came up with this, my business partner and I, is that we needed something to give them at home to be able to do that. Put it by your bed. Oral Hershiser said it the best. He's like, man, if I had this, I would have put it right next to my bed and I would have had one in my baseball bag. And after each night, before I went to bed, I would just ingrain that pattern in me and just to be on myself, just working through that. Then right before I go play catch, I'd take it out again and I'd strap it on, do dry work without a ball, take it off, grab the baseball, and now I'm ready to go. And that repetitive motion or that repetitive instruction to yourself just starts to create it. So I get asked, how long does it take? Well, it depends how much you work. I mean, it's like anything. So this just is part of the process of it to make it quicker. So if you have a great lower half, then you match this up, it'll just blow you away. I get DMs constantly, text constantly. And these are big leaguers. These are guys who are very high level, but they're realizing there's something missing. And they're going, oh my God, this is a total game changer for me. And it's because they could move really well. That's what got them to the point they're at now. But now you added this, now your arm's in a better position to create this short stretch cycle that you're going to get benefit from. Oh, your spin numbers are increasing, your vertical numbers increasing. Now your contracts are increasing. There's so many benefits to these things that go unseen, but not to the big leaguers that know how important these small little details are, because there's such a high level of competition and there's such a high emphasis on data and why are all our pitchers having high spin and high vertical numbers? Here's the secret. This is literally the secret. And when you put it all together, you can maybe set yourself up for a bigger contract or be flat out just be healthier and last longer. There's a lot of big benefits from being by pitching efficiently, throwing efficiently.
Yeah, I think addressing that problem of, the other 23 hours, if you will, right? When they leave the gym and they go home, because, even, I can relate with my experience in the minor leagues, you'd have kids that had the yips, right? Or they couldn't throw correctly. So one day they would come out, one pitching coach would fix it. And then the next day they'd be with another person, or, there was or they felt great before the game, and then they bring them in the game and everything goes crazy. So I think, bringing up that consistency, right? It's not about who's better at teaching or what their accolades are. It's about, can you teach them a pattern that's efficient, that's going to be to the best of their ability, but can I constantly reinforce that, right? And I think with the arm path, it's more of, I've done this for 10 years, so I know what my arm path is supposed to look like or feel like, right? And they're going to either continuously throw until it feels like that, or waiting for somebody to tell them this is what it looks like, instead of really breaking those mechanics down and saying, no, that's perfect. That's where we want you. Keep doing that. Right. But I think with the path, it's, you can keep putting them in that position, even like you said, in the big leagues, there's always room for that improvement.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, for sure.
So I just want to go through some of the, the philosophies and stuff at PFA, the incorporation of the pocket path, just real quick, what you guys do there, amongst using the pocket path and some of the things that you do at the facility.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like a big piece of it, obviously but it's just more of the foundation of the day when they come in. So typically at a facility like ours, there's about 10 of them just sitting here on a rack right here in front of me. Or they'll bring in their own, because COVID, we have a little bit different restrictions. So they'll do their dry work. There'll be a board where they go through, pretty much stock for everybody, get some activation going, get some dry work going without a ball first with the belt on. After they've done their dry work, which they're just working on basically just one position, then two position, then hips position. So they just have this little sequence that they do every day. Then they pick up the green ball, which is a 32-ounce ball that comes with the program. They'll start to do their warm-up, so it's a heavier ball. So they're working on their taps, position-wise. Everything we do is all based off the whole body sequence. So getting the arm path, but also timing, most importantly, timing the hip with where the arm position is. So they'll do that. There's about 6 exercises they'll do there. Then they'll go to a 16-ounce ball. So we're going down to the one that's the yellow one. And now from there, they're going to do quarterback drills. So they're just basically emphasizing a quarterback throw. And then from there, they go into their 5-ounce throws, which is the other ball, which is the only 3 balls they get. The 5-ounce ball is just really now bringing in the athletic movement. So it might be, I like to name them after certain players. Nolan Arenado, foot down in the ground on his knee, throwing a ball there. Jimmy Rollins, some Philly guy, Dodger guys, turning to double play, throwing on the run like Derek Jeter back, just kind of having some fun. Drew Brees, working in the pocket, moving your feet light, getting rid of the ball quick, and then once they've done that, they do that as a free-throwing thing. Then they go in and they get ready to play catch, and they do whatever their routine is there. If it's a just strength day, just purely no throwing really, what they'll do is they'll do the green ball only, the yellow ball, which is the heavier ones, and they'll just do that 2 sets through. So it's kind of like they just went out and threw the football for 10 minutes, just to get the arm strength. So that's kind of what they do. That emphasizes a higher pocket, a little more connection to the arm path, and not getting too much stress on like a lighter weight, kind of whipping their head around and doing all those kind of things. That's a typical day. Of course, we have the weight room in here, so they'll do their strength classes as well, evenings and those things. That's pretty much a typical day here.
Oh, nice. And you got the nice weather, right?
Yeah, we do.
So, at the facility, like I said, it's awesome, that integration. In terms of, let's go with pitching and kind of the integration of strength and conditioning, what are some things that you'd like to see change in the future? I know you have the pocket path, excuse me,
Yeah.
and you're starting to see that, but what are some things that you would like to see change? Let's go, through professional baseball and college in terms of the field.
Well, we touched on it a minute ago on just the communication between the medical side, anatomy side, pitching coaching side, just kind of getting collaborated better there. Maybe giving them the resources. Maybe it's, small colleges don't have big resources, but maybe there's just a way that maybe in a simple way, because I'm always about simplicity. And if you go down that anatomy hole, and it can go pretty deep, and you can get pretty technical, and you can lose sight of like, hey, what about the guy in the middle, that guy they call the player, on how do we teach that to him in a basic form, very easy form. So again, that goes back to like our methodology is a very, very easy to digest type of mindset. And it's not me being overly geeky. I could do that. I can talk geeky to whoever I want, but I know that that's just more of a show of your, ego than it is actual functional coaching. So to me, I think we all need to do a better job from a pro level, maybe creating the data, bringing the data together with the coach, with the trainers, with the actual philosophy, rather than the data guy just knows the data. The pitching coach hides the data from the player, and the player is on the data, but he doesn't know what the heck to do with it. So I hear that all the time. At college, it's similar to that too. It's like they have all this data stuff, but I'll ask the player, what are they telling you? What are they, 90% of the coaches out there will go, or players will say, they don't tell me. They just tell me, they just do it, but they don't show us what it is. So they're, I think communication level, letting the players know a little bit more what's going on behind the scenes, why they're using the data. Maybe the coaches maybe just don't know much about it. I know for me, I had to really learn this data stuff because I needed to. People wanted to hear that conversation. They wanted to know these things. So just getting away from that and being open to that topic is good at the high school level. And now it's starting to come into the high school. The data is starting to get there. That's the hardest one, I think, of all of them. They're the most stubborn group, I think, in the world, is a high school coach. They very, they're very secretive about what they think is the right way to do. They don't want to communicate. And they're in a weird place because it's travel ball and high school competing. So they're, unfortunately the players get lost in that equation. And so I think just better communication through everybody, open dialogues, visiting facilities, visiting pitching coaches, visiting hitting coaches, and just getting together, whether it's having a beer or just coming to the facility to see what's happening, because I guarantee you, both sides all want the best thing for the player, but unfortunately sometimes the ego is involved in them, or the lack of knowledge involved in the process from one or the other is where the disconnect comes in. So I think at a big macro level, I think that's the genesis of all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That communication ring, that triangle, if you will, we talk about all the time, but that has to continuously improve because, the data is great, right? But if you don't know what it is, or the thing is too, with the data, we talk about, the lowest person on the totem pole has to understand the data, right? Because you see these programs all the time. Well, they went from 80 to 97 miles an hour, and I have the data. Well, what does that mean? Explain how you did that. And if it's too complicated, or you can't explain that to me in less than 20 minutes, then I think there's a problem, or it's too much going on, right? I mean, you're not going to the moon, you're teaching people how to throw harder and become better athletes. So I think, of course, it's the communication, and then also the get away from this. Well, it's too complicated, you wouldn't understand. Well, if you can't explain it to me, then there's a problem, right? Because then you don't understand it fully. And I think that's one of the things.
True.
So anybody who wants to get involved in, kind of your niche, right? Being a coach and a skills coach, but then understanding and being involved in the strength conditioning and the physical therapy side, what would be your advice? Somebody maybe coming out of high school, or maybe an athlete that just got done with their career, what would be the best thing to do for them?
Well, I was in that exact same boat. And my, what I did was I searched out people who I knew in the business, and I just tried to attach myself and try to learn. And I did a lot of seminars. I went to seminars. I didn't do them. I went to them. And I signed up for anyone I could, even if it wasn't about, well, they all weren't about pitching. It was all about training at that point. And Then when it went to ones about pitching, or I just listened to conversations of coaches doing it. Now, Twitter world and Instagram world, although can be very dark hole, there are some great resources there. And just get on Twitter and just type in, who are the people I should follow? Who are the people that, and you'll get a bunch of opinions, but maybe start to figure out which one that makes more sense to you, or that you just have a different style that's similar to it. It doesn't always have to be what they're doing up here. It could be just what they're doing in their heart and how they explain things and how their passion is and all these things. So I think learning from guys who do things with energy and passion and amazement, and just motivate you. If you're going to be a coach, read books on them, watch their seminars, go to their seminars, podcasts, like listen to that tempo, listen to that energy they give. I say that to our trainers a lot of times. It's like PFA was built not because of the knowledge of this secret weapon of training that we had. It was because it was a culture that we created, that when a kid came in, they're going to bring up that whole room. So the trainer had to learn how to do that. And that's a huge piece. Pitching side of things, there's tons of ways to get yourself information, but shoot, follow me. I give a ton of stuff for free all the time. Come in here if you're in the area and watch us do our work. We're always open for those kind of things. We have coaches and people who are trying to get into coaching come here all the time. So there's tons of resources. I think it's just a matter of just getting off your butt and just getting out there and doing it, and be open to change your mind if you had it set on something, and use a little bit of a lot of people. And that's the way to make your own thing pretty big.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Use a lot of different things. And I think that culture thing is great. Immerse yourself in a culture that is working, right? A lot of energy, being able to take a kid who comes in at a 1 and bring them up to an 8 or 9 based on just the culture, right? And not to say that it has to be with screaming and yelling, but I think the culture word, especially in the community with strength and conditioning and coaching, is huge, because you want to learn how to transfer energy to your athletes, right? That's what makes all our programs. That's what makes everything succeed. And I think that is huge. Make sure to go and find a culture that fits you or doesn't fit you, right? Maybe you're not a big yeller, you're introverted. Go to a gym where there's rock music and screaming and things going on. That way you could say, hey, maybe I like this, or maybe, this isn't for me, just like I thought, but at least you went there. But I think exposing yourself to as many different, performance cultures and coaching cultures as there is, I think that's a great piece of advice.
Right.
So for anybody, Dave, who wants to get a hold of you, and I will agree, you do give out, lots of information, always stories up, posts. What is kind of the best ways to get a hold of you if I have a question, or, I just want to learn more about PFA and the Pocket Path?
Yeah, of course. Website, if you want to look a little bit more about the Pocket Path, it's pretty easy. It's pocketpath.com. If you're wanting to follow me on Instagram, I have 2 places that I'm posting a lot of stuff. Main one that I've done for years is just search PFA Baseball 1 or Dave Coggin. You'll search that, it'll be coming up. And then Pocket Path is my new Instagram that I'm putting out lots of information on that. And pretty soon we're going to have a full membership starting here with the website. So when you get a Pocket Path kit, you're going to be able to access tons and tons of cool stuff going on with videos on every piece of it. We have a studio that we just built in here, so we're excited to launch that here in the next month or 2. We got a couple big announcements that are happening pretty soon that we're going to be talking about. And just jump in there and just ask me questions. DM me anytime you want. February 21st, there'll be some information on my Instagram and my Twitter about the free demo, basically talking about kind of how I set it up, what it does, and how we do some drills, and also have my youth coach here, the director of the youth for the T-ball kit, going to show off a little bit of that as well, and we'll do some live demos on the video, which should be fun. So any of that stuff, you can easily find me. Just search my name.
All right. And for anybody that follows on the Instagram, when I promote the episode, I will put Dave's Instagram handle, and the PFA website he was referring to is in the bio on there. And also make sure you tune in for that February 21st. Dave, I thank you so much for coming on, man. It was an awesome conversation. I mean, I followed the Pocket Path. I enjoyed, catching up, and it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Strength Coach Experience for all the latest weekly updates on the podcast.